welcome back to The World is Storytelling, and welcome to The World is Storytelling. Brian, shall I call you Brian?
Brian is fine.
Brian is fine. That's a rhyme.
It is.
Brian is fine, that's a rhyme. We don't have too much time, so let's make this shine.
I was expecting that line.
Did you bring the brine?
No, but we'll be fine.
Okay. But, I'm going to stick with my day job because I'm not a lyrical genius. However, you, in some senses, are a lyrical genius.
I spent 35 years with Greenpeace as an environmental activist, primarily, peace activist. And so I had a lot of experience with sort of pancake landings and soaring successes, and I realized at some point in my life that the distinguishing factor between them was story. When there's a good story behind what you're doing, when it feels like an invitation, then that's something that people want to get behind. Tommy Crawford and I founded Dancing Fox to take that idea and bring it out to as many social change folks as we could bring it to. My 35 years with Greenpeace, setting out onto the ocean to save whales, stopped a nuclear weapons test for 4 days at one point with a bunch of colleagues, spent a lot of time on ships and among people who were extraordinary, not only people, but storytellers themselves. And it was amazing how you'd hear these incredible stories in the pub or at the mess of the Rainbow Warrior, and then you put a microphone in front of somebody, and they'd turn into a CNN correspondent. It was just crushing. It was like, no, dude, what you did the other night, that's what I'm looking for. But there was always this sense of, well, no, we need to be professional. We need to be, grown up. I'm like, no, I want that little kid who told me a story. That's what I wanted. So I'll tell you a story that made me feel like a little kid at one point. When I started out with Greenpeace in Boston, I was a canvasser. It was absolutely, I got to tell you, I did things in Greenpeace where I was literally risked my life. None of them were as terrifying as walking up to the first door and knocking on it and saying, "Hello, I'm from Greenpeace," and launching into my pitch. So I'm, knocking on doors around the Boston area and the suburbs out there. And one Saturday, I just got this, what we used to call bad turf.
Okay.
And not bad turf because it was poor, but bad turf because it was rich. It was an incredibly wealthy suburban neighborhood. And I walk up to this house where there are these two marble lions at the base of the driveway. And I'm walking up this seemingly endless driveway to this house, and I see a BMW with a Ronald Reagan bumper sticker on it. And I'm just deflated because, every canvasser learns to read a house about whether you're going to get a membership or not. You're looking for the Volvo and the Golden Retriever, and there's certain signs that will say, this house is interested in environmentalism. This house had none of those vibes whatsoever. But you give it a try. So I knocked on the door. Guy comes to the door. I launch into my spiel. Hi, I'm from Greenpeace. We're the environmental group working to save the whales and the seals. Not seeing any reaction. Working to stop toxic waste. Not seeing any reaction. Very cold. I'm just about ready to give up. And I'm talking about, and we're working to stop acid rain. The guy says, hold on, stop there. You work on acid rain? I said, yeah. He said, stay there. I'm going to write you a check. He walks away. He comes back. He writes me a check for $100, which in those days, 1982, highest possible membership you could take out, something we usually had to nudge to get people to sign up for. And he does it right off the bat. And I'm like, wow, thank you. And I didn't even tell him anything about what we were doing about acid rain, which is probably a good thing because the last thing we had done was a little bit embarrassing. We had hung what probably was the world's longest banner from the world's tallest smokestack in Seattle with the phrase, when the last tree is cut, the last river poisoned, and the last fish dead, you will discover that you can't eat money. And this was a stunt to call attention to the fact that this stack was spewing soot into the air that was actually falling on the forests of Pennsylvania as acid rain. And that was the story we were trying to tell. Unfortunately, the banner got twisted. So the newspapers the next day ran a photo of a Greenpeace banner hanging from the highest smokestack in North America that said, when the last tree is cut, the last river poison and the last fish dead, you will disco.
Sorry.
Ouch. So anyway, I didn't tell him that story. He wrote me a check anyway. And I'm like, okay, terrific. He says, you see those marble lions at the bottom of the driveway? Carrara marble, all the way from Italy. Those things are dissolving like chalk in vinegar because of their acid rain. And he had bought these lions because his kids loved lions, and he wanted his kids and their kids to have those lions. And that was his reason for signing up with Greenpeace. And it just, it reminded me that there's so many different ways that people have of caring about the future. And that was his way. We like to talk in Dancing Fox about making the weird normal and the normal weird. And it was once weird to care about the environment, and I've seen it become so much more normal. It was once weird to object to smoking on a plane. That's kind of normal these days, smoking on a plane has become weird. And again, from women's rights to the end of apartheid, people who have been considered weird for standing up for an idea have become the norm. And the old normal has become weird. And I think that process is one of the things that story helps to sort of shift. You remind people of what's possible, that, human beings, when we put our minds to it, can do the right thing. And all the polarization that we see and all of the, despair at the size of the challenges we're facing today. Bob Hunter, who's one of the founders of Greenpeace, said, big change looks impossible when you start and inevitable when you finish. And I've just always loved that because it reminds us that if we're not working for something that seems impossible, maybe we're not working on something that represents big change. There was a time that I was training to be a hot air balloon pilot.
Okay, as you do.
We were going to fly a hot air balloon into the Nevada nuclear weapons test site to stop a nuclear weapons test. We figured out the next year it was a lot easier to just walk in and do the same thing, which is what we did. But in training for this mission, two of us were learning how to fly a hot air balloon and what it takes to get it in the air and all that stuff. And we entered into a hot air balloon race. We were heating up the balloon. We had this whole crowd of people, a massive, massive balloon festival. Everybody's holding onto the basket. At some point, the pilot is heating up the basket and does not say, let go of the basket. Someone in the crowd says, let go of the basket. So the balloon is not hot enough to pop into the air, which it's supposed to do. All it does is sort of drag along the very, very crowded park where we were taking off from. And, people are running away as this thing is sort of roaring through the crowd. And desperately, the pilot is trying to get it hot enough. Gene and I are both, clearing the way as best we can. Get out of the way, get out of the way, get out of the way. And finally, he gets it up to the point where it snags on a crane and tips me out of the basket. The last thing I remember is reaching for the emergency deflation cord, and I just followed my hand onto the top of a truck, bounced off that, and landed on my back. And picture in the Boston Globe the next day, Boston Blue pilot Brian Fitzgerald falls from hot air balloon, picture of my sneakers in a circle, not the image I was hoping my mom would get to see. And then years later, I'm sitting with my mother-in-law looking for the Yankees game on TV. We're looking around. I see this image of this hot air balloon with this kid falling out of it. And I go, that's me. I had no idea that there had been a video crew there, gotten it on video, and then sold it to Amazing Survival Stories or something like this. And it was the first time I'd seen it. Yeah, I was kind of amazed I survived.
Well, I'm glad that you did.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Me too.
Oh, wow, Brian. Well, thank you very, very much for coming on The World is Storytelling.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And that was The World is Storytelling with me, Ronnie. To support The World is Storytelling and our mission to bring wonderful stories that change the world, make sure to subscribe, rate, follow the podcast, buy the book, and get in touch